if you're not listening to what the consumer wants from your brand and you're trying to build a brand in a vacuum, you're dead. They're not going to buy it.
The small to mid-sized business owner should be worried more about their personal brand than their logo. Nobody buys a logo. We buy from people.
Personal branding is really important, and social media makes it easy. You know, even if you don't produce your own content. Gary started by commenting on other people's wine stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I would imagine Gary's got some ideas.
Well, too many to count.
Yeah.
Great people surround themselves with great people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't get great unless you surround yourself with that.
He says, strangers become acquaintances become friends, and friends become family. That's what he sees in his company. The platforms, the algorithms are changing daily. It's hard to master them, although Gary
Or to
does.
hire an expert for it, because you are an expert at now is obsolete
Right.
tomorrow.
You blink
Right.
and
So
it's gone.
we're looking for sponges, not rocks.
Ah.
Right? So how do we absorb what we're doing? When Gary hired me, he gave me tremendous advice. He said,
Well, we are back again. That's right. This is the Breaking Barriers podcast powered by S.O.A.R. I'm here once again with the one and only Brian P. Swift, the QuadFather. Again, my name is John Morris, and we have a very special guest today. We are here with Mr. James Orsini.
good to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And James has had quite the career, and we're going to dig into that a little bit. So could you just kind of give our viewers a little bit of an understanding of what you're doing now, and where did you get your start?
Yeah, so now I am officially, quote unquote, retired from
Oh
the
my
big corporate
gosh.
America. And then I entered into my own consulting practice along with my wife. And my first two big retained clients are a company called vYve, which we actually started in the hallways of VaynerMedia. It was a Gary Vaynerchuk company. Started it there, ran it there for a year. It's leadership training, professional development, masterclass, as we try to create better leaders. And it cross-pollinates entrepreneurs with Fortune 500 C-suiters. If you know anything about Gary, left brain entrepreneur, right brain marketer. So it's very natural in his world to have that. We've been doing that for the past couple of years. So I'm a co-founder and business coach there. And most recently, I linked up with a colleague from London who worked for me 30 years ago at Saatchi & Saatchi.
Wow.
He started a company 6 years ago called Factotum, which services small business, back offices for small business. It does bookkeeping and tax. It does human resource, compliance, recruiting, payroll processing. It does public relations, social media, website builds, those kind of things. So
All the stuff that a technical expert does not want to do.
all the thorn is in somebody's side.
And it
correct.
frees them up so they can go be the superstar that they're made to be and not having to worry about doing the back office
Yeah,
stuff.
you know, it's so funny because I just wrote a piece on this in Medium where I said over this 40-year career, I probably bought 25, 30 service sector companies, and most of them sold to me because they didn't want to do the back office.
Yeah.
So it was like, look, I just want to do what I want to do. You guys handle all this other stuff, please. You know, I'm not into human resource. I don't want to worry about IT. You know, I can't balance a book. So
Well, only 25 to 30. I mean, we thought you would have been at 40, 45. So.
yeah.
He's just talking the last couple since he's
Yeah,
retired.
that was last week.
That was when he was retired. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
25
He
bought
slowed down.
25 bought, 40 sold.
There you go.
So, you know, you brought up Medium, and I do a little writing on there, and we're talking about all the hats people have to wear. And you may be great at one or two of them, but eventually you have to learn, hand off those other hats to people that could free up your time to do what you are really great at. And I know that you are considered the startup Sherpa, I think I saw it,
Yes.
and the content king. So you have had to overcome, especially with buying and selling businesses and being the startup king and Sherpa, you've had to cross barriers that most of us can't even fathom.
You know, it's funny because my last role at VaynerMedia was president of startup operations. So
Wow.
I would start up new companies that Gary thought up, really. So whether that was his production studio in Long Island City, a company called the Sasha Group, which I started and ran for 5 years, or the most recent vYve company that we started. So, you know, I see myself as an entrepreneur enabler, taking someone else's dreams and visions and making them into action plans. What I find with working with these entrepreneurs is there's never a shortage of ideas.
Oh, yeah.
Right, there's a
I would
big-
imagine Gary's got some ideas.
Well, too many to count. You know,
Yeah.
people ask me, does he sleep? I'm like, yeah, he sleeps. He just does more when he's awake than anybody I've ever seen. I said, but he definitely
You're the
sleeps.
practical guy, though. So I would
Yeah.
imagine that yin yang where he's got an idea and you're like, hey, Gary, that's not practical.
You know, it was so funny because when we met, I told my wife, I said, I'm the exact opposite of this guy. Like, I wear a ski helmet to go down the Bunny Hill in Shawnee, and he's jumping out of helicopters. So, yeah, it was a good compliment for the time that it was. And I held five different roles, had 4 different titles over the 11 years that I was with him. Yeah,
So one of the barriers that business people have to break is overcoming being told no. Obviously, Brian has to overcome a whole different set of barriers,
Yes.
which we're very excited and proud of him that he handles it with the mindset that he does. As it relates to business, though, he's got to overcome people saying no to him. And I'm certain that you've had a lot of folks say no that ended up saying yes. So talk a little bit about how you handle that no, how you overcome and break that barrier.
Well, look, it was a humble background, right? I was the son of a plumber who grew up in Newark, New Jersey, did not go to an Ivy League school, although I was accepted into one, and found myself working for KPMG and Goldman Sachs, and it wasn't the norm. And in the case of Goldman Sachs, I was actually a test pilot. I was like a lab rat. I was one of 5 2-year CPAs, non-Ivy League, to see if we could sit in a cubicle and match up with a Wharton MBA, which is typically who they would hire.
Yeah.
And can you track with these guys was the question. So fortunately for me, was successful, and the hiring program remains in effect today. But back then it was, you know, overcoming the boundary. I remember the first role that I had after that was I was International Director of Financial Reporting for a Saatchi subsidiary.
How did you put that on a business card?
Oh my God! We took our first flight, and the guy, my boss, took my passport, and he's thumbing through it, and he said, and it's all blank, and he said, Bonnie, Aruba, is that the only place you went to, Aruba, on your honeymoon? And I said, no, my parents took me to Florida in 8th grade. He goes, oh my God, I just made you International Director of Financial Reporting, and you've been to Florida and Aruba?
That's amazing.
Buckle up.
Yeah, you're about to see the world.
And that was, you know, within 5 years, we built the 5th largest public relations firm in the world.
Unreal.
And I was overseeing 31 offices in 26 countries.
You know what I think about when you, with those stories is the perception of society that they had to hire an Ivy League person to do a job. And I understand that because I know what I fought when people get the perception of seeing somebody in a wheelchair is that, can I do what's required of me? And what society and business and all the metrics in the world can't measure is your mindset, your heart set, and your will to succeed.
Yes.
They just, you can't measure that in any institution. You can't test it on any metrics. The only way of doing it is sitting down and letting me show you what I'm made of.
That's just it. You have to prove it. I mean, I remember at Saatchi, I was chief operating officer. I was sitting on the creative floor, and one of our creators was quadriplegic, and he was in wheelchairs, and but he was award-winning creative, doing excellent work for General Mills at the time. You know, but it wasn't without their support because obviously he had to fly first class. He had to be in a van. You know, so when you're going to commercials and shooting these commercials, it matters.
The juice has to be worth the squeeze for the company because he's got to be able to put the type of work out that justifies that.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, it is a bottom line business. So he's got to create a return on investment. And that's what you've been talking about is like you had to do just a little bit more than everyone else just to be even, right?
Absolutely. I got to a point where I had won so many awards at a leadership level, working with inside sales professionals. And I asked, I've been passed over. And their excuse was, you never sold outside. And I said, the process is similar. The process of selling is no different inside than outside. And could you handle being outside? Most of the accounts were professionals, doctors, lawyers, dentists. So most of their businesses were accessible. And I had to go to the point of saying, give me the worst sales team in the company. The worst outside sales team in the company.
Let me show you
If
something.
I don't put them in the top 10, I will quit.
Yeah.
You don't have to deal with me. They gave me the worst sales team in the company, 0 for 8 years of being in the top 10 or winning a trip in the top 5. and I put them in the 5th place the next year.
You know, and I made a whole profession of that, right? I was known as the shit fixer, if I could say
Let's
that.
go. The turnaround guy.
That's
Because I would take all the broken pieces that were, you know, lost in the hallways and be able to put them together and purpose for profits and you know, make something from them.
Man, sometimes when you can take a group of misfits, right, that have a chip on their shoulder, they got that grit, right? And that's going back to being told no. A lot of those folks, they've been turned down, they've been told no. You give them some really good leadership.
You know, the interesting part was just taking the time to understand what it is that they do well. What I found was we had a lot of people out of position. We had second basemen playing center field. Once I put them back into second base, they were good.
Yeah.
So, you know, just finding the sweet spot and moving them and positioning them in the sweet spot was a success story itself.
So I'm a hyper-curious person. As I told you, I'm a big-time follower of Gary. In fact, Gary Vayner. Yeah. Gary Carter played third base or catcher for the Mets. No, Gary, you know, is a real inspiration to me. I create podcasts and I create content, and just his delivery and his passion, his inspiration, and the fact that he gives people permission. You know, there's a level of that. But I'm really curious how you have different personalities, and I would imagine you had to push back on occasion with Gary. And how did he handle that? And how did he rub off on you? Because I would imagine he had a integral role in your life of helping you to maybe come out of your shell and to take it to the max.
Yeah, still does. Well, I was fortunate when, so how I met him is I sat next to his brother, AJ, at a Seton Hall University basketball game years earlier. I became a mentor to AJ. And then years later, when I was running a small publicly traded company, my developers developed something for Facebook, and they're like, "Who can we show this to?" And I said, "I know this kid. He's got a small company he started." I call AJ, and he's like, "Yeah, come on in." I go in. There's like 250 people there. I still had not heard of his brother yet, and he said to me, "Have you ever heard of my brother Gary?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, why don't you do a quick Google search? He's not going to be hard to find." Yeah. And I did, and he wasn't. And I was one of their first senior hires. Remember, I was the CEO of a publicly traded company when they brought me in. But Gary was crystal clear. James, I want to build a $500 million integrated, independent, international communications company.
Just that clear on his vision.
That clear on an interview. And I'm like, yeah, I think I can. So he said, all right, well, let's get busy. Gary applies what's called the 10-80-10 rule. 10% he comes in and sets the vision. 80% he gives you the liberty to work it. 10% he comes in to finalize it to make sure it's on his vision. So the 10-80-10 rule is what helped this company that when I joined was a little under 40 million, a little under 400 people. And we ended last year 350 million, 2,000 people across 15 offices.
Unreal. So he's the opener and the closer in that.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And in between, he lets the players play.
Yeah, he does.
That's beautiful. That's real leadership and management. To have, with his baby, with his name on it, to have that type of grace.
Yeah.
To allow people to be creative, to be innovative. It's no wonder that the company's grown.
Yeah, well, he stretches kindness and empathy and gratitude. I mean, what he calls the soft skills of leadership. It was in his book, 12 and a Half. He would much rather have a nice person and teach them the skills. Remember, I joined this company. I was 53 years old. I didn't know anything about social media.
Yeah.
I wasn't from the digital world, but I knew what I knew. I had wisdom and experience that nobody else in the hallways had. So, we worked together, I taught him and his team what it was that I knew, helped to bring some management folks to the table as he was growing a company. Remember, he was a retailer. He wasn't an advertising guy.
Retail wine. His dad started a wine store, and he started doing the taste testing online, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. He just he recognizes patterns and sees things before most do. He doesn't have a crystal ball or anything. He just observes. He's observant.
He's very hard to keep up with because the minute that one of his things now is it's no longer social media, it's interest media.
Interest media
and
based on interest graphs.
I've practiced this thought process where he saes the best marketing strategy you can have is kindness.
Yeah.
And boy, is that relevant and important in this day and age.
Yeah.
How is that type of leadership fed into you? Because it sounds like he got you on second base when you wanted to play second base,
Yeah,
and that's why you excelled.
And that was right. I was telling him before we walked into the room that I had read a book called Consigliere, Leading from the Shadows, and it was about being a great number two. I had just stepped down from being the CEO of a small publicly traded company.
Yeah.
And when I read that book, I'm like, but this is who I am, and I'm fine with it. I became a number one because everybody was saying to me, why are you always a number two? You should be a number one. And I was like, all right. So I became a number one. It's a hard and lonely job. I didn't need the maybe if I had a number two like me, I would have been more successful. Who knows?
But you know, to be an awesome number two, you just got to find an even better number one.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Great people surround themselves with great people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You don't get great unless you surround yourself with that. And you brought up the term soft skills, and it's something so missing from today. Something as simple as kindness, gratitude. And that's not a business skill. It's a life skill. I think it's the way you live. You don't turn it on when you open the door at your office. You either are that way, you live that way, that is your life.
Yeah, and this is what we try to do in vYve. We're trying to create these better leaders because the ROI is measurable, right? Gary's company, at one time when I looked at it, had a 17% voluntary turnover rate in an industry that averaged 35.
Yeah, that's
right? So
that's just
it was
unreal.
half the industry average. People stayed, wanted to be there, stayed longer, and became a part of it.
And some consultants might have come in and said it's too low. You need it to be higher. You're not turning enough people over.
Some
you know,
like to turn their company over every 3 years. That's not who he is. You know what I mean, he's all
developer.
Yeah.
He's about family. What does he say? He says, strangers become acquaintances, acquaintances become friends, and friends become family. That's what he sees in his company.
I can't imagine trying to turn over a company every 3 years. I mean, the development time could take 3 years to get somebody comfortable at playing their position and grow their skill set.
It would be like running a university.
Right.
They turn over their customer base every 4 years,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And look how they're going.
Yeah.
Not so well.
Not so well.
James, I think you have a book in you. I think The Shit Fixer would be a great title for a book.
I was telling my colleague at lunch that I've done now, this will be 72, my 72nd podcast, and I wrote 30 articles. I'm like, apparently if I drop all that shit into ChatGPT, I have a book.
You have a book, 100. And probably a speaking tour.
A couple books, maybe.
Yeah.
I love that, though. I mean, because, you know, Dave Meltzer, he's just turning out a book called Don't Do Business with Dicks.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking The Shit Fixer would be absolutely
There you go.
perfect
The
for a
complimentary book. You just go from volume to volume.
Absolutely.
I'm curious at Vayner, like when you were, your hiring is probably different than most folks just because of the values that Gary has and how that's trickled down the organization. So if you wanted to talk to the 20-somethings that wanted to get a shot there, and you were going to coach them as to how they should present themselves in the interview, what would be 3 things that you would tell them?
Well, what's different in the hallways of VaynerMedia is we have our own recruiting department. We don't go outside. We don't use outside recruiters. So we need people who understand our culture and are hiring for that right personality first, and we'll teach you the skills second. You mentioned how it moved from social media to interest me. So the platforms, the algorithms are changing daily. It's hard to master them, although Gary
or to hire an expert for it, because what you are an expert at now is obsolete tomorrow.
You blink, and
so
it's gone.
We're looking for sponges, not rocks. Right. So how do we absorb what we're doing? When Gary hired me, he gave me tremendous advice. He said, James, for the first 6 weeks, I just want you to breathe my company. I don't want you to come in here and tell me all the shit that I'm doing wrong. Okay. I want you to understand how I operate. I want you to sit in different meetings. And then after that time, then we'll talk about what it is that you observed from your 30-plus years in the industry at that time, 40 now. Look, there's probably 150 resumes for every open position that we have.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not easy. One of the faults that I have with universities and their career development centers is they're still operating like it's 1980. In 1980, we all got jobs. Just teach me how to do an interview, show me how to build a resume, and I'm going to work. Now, if you don't know how to network, you are not getting a job.
No.
You are on the sideline.
You got to know somebody who knows somebody.
Exactly. And you have to work it, right? And you know, you may not know somebody directly, but somebody who you know may know somebody who's in there. So, you know, work the networks. Use social media. Social media has leveled the playing field for everybody, right? So leverage it, use it, a direct message. Paul's here because he reached out to me and said, "Hey, I want to be your videographer this weekend. I want to come to
That
where
away,
you
Paul.
are and capture your content."
You have to ask.
Right?
You have to ask, right?
Yeah,
I mean, if you don't open
absolutely.
your
You
mouth
don't
and
get
ask,
what you don't
and
ask
I
for.
said, "What do you want me to do?" He goes, "I just want you to say yes." So I
That's
did.
a good
and he's
close.
Here.
he had the question
that.
and the answer all ready for you.
He
Yeah.
was packaged up, and he bought me lunch today.
Oh,
Oh my gosh! Wow! Holy cow! That's
So
full service, baby.
so if you want 3 answers, you ask for the job, you have the answer prepared, and you buy him lunch.
And you buy lunch. That's it.
you know what's interesting? Because you came from the #1 spot, corporate USA. Brilliant of Gary to say take 6 weeks to breathe it in, because it softened your culture shock, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Look, I thought he was brilliant for hiring somebody like me. I was a big investment at that time. You know, I had been in public relations, branding, general market advertising, mobile media,
You knew the holistic.
and he wanted to do everything.
Yeah.
So, I'm like, great, this is it. The only thing that I'm missing is the digital social world that I don't understand. If I have that, I'm now full circle. And and he said, "James, you've made 30 years of mistakes I don't want to make. Help me avoid the potholes and move faster."
Brilliant.
Smart.
Yeah, it was smart.
Yeah, beyond.
Brian and I have been working together, and we certainly understand the power of building a personal brand. So talk a little bit about, you're obviously helping corporate brands to get their brand identity right, to have the right message, to lead with purpose, their core values, not products and services, right? The why over the what and how.
Yeah.
But talk a little bit about, from your experience and your expertise, like, what is the power of building a personal brand, and how could somebody overcome and break the barrier of that fear, and why they should do that?
The personal brand is really important. When I went to work for that small mobile media company, my personal brand was bigger than that company's brand. There was I never forget, the first article was in Mobile Marketer, and the headline read, "What makes James Orsini leave his comfortable perch at Saatchi & Saatchi to go to Single Touch?"
Wow,
Right?
talk about a backhanded compliment.
Yeah, it was like carrying that brand. Now, the same thing happened now. We're talking about this company, Factotum, okay? Here in the U.S. market, my brand is bigger than Factotum until we build this company, right? They're big in London. Everybody knows who they are there. They've been around for 6 years. But here, they're leveraging my personal brand, which is why they're here with me today at this conference, to help be in the room and meeting people. And, I'll talk about them from the platforms that I have. But personal branding is really important. And social media makes it easy. Even if you don't produce your own content. Gary started by commenting on other people's wine stuff.
The money's in the comments,
right? Just he would do hashtag Chardonnay
because it's
what the
giving.
conversation was about.
By commenting on somebody else's content, you're giving. You allow reciprocity to work. If I continue to comment, and every time you turn on your phone, you see the little red bubble, and you go, "What in the world? There's 10 red bubbles here. What's going on?" And every one of them is me.
Yeah.
At some point, you're going to have to look into
say,
me.
"Hey, this guy must know something about wine."
Yeah. Or he really likes me. Why does he like me so
Right,
much?
right.
I need to look into this guy.
Exactly.
So the small to mid-sized business owner, to your point, should be worried more about their personal brand than their logo. Nobody buys a logo. We buy from people.
True. This is where Gary would say it's an and not an and or. You need to do both.
Yeah.
Right? Because we want a brand that we could trust, and we want somebody behind that brand when we call to make sure that they're answering the phone and dealing with our needs.
Yeah.
So, we talk about now brands are built on social. When I was at Interbrand, we would build a brand in a conference room with 12 executives, and we would say, this is the brand we're going to build, and we're going to tell the world that this is the brand. Okay, now, if you're not listening to what the consumer wants from your brand and you're trying to build a brand in a vacuum, you're dead. They're not going to buy it.
And James, it's so easy, to your point too, John, to ask people when you ask people to even give, it doesn't have to, it's not always a financial ask. Sometimes it's as simple as leaving a comment that can make a difference. Not
That's
just leaving
so
a
important.
comment, but sharing, leaving a comment, subscribing takes no effort.
So we obviously are doing this podcast because we want to help to get Brian's message out there. It's a brilliant message. Since he was 17 years old, he's been in a wheelchair. He's defied all odds, written 9 books, became a lawyer, has a thriving charity. He's a speaker. Like, there's so many things that he's doing. But we're shocked by the 61 million people that are disabled in the United States that aren't quite yet contributing to their own movement.
Yeah.
Really, there should be a movement.
Yeah.
So what would be a recommendation that you might make to get more eyeballs on this message and to get them more engaged?
Well, I like featuring people who have the handicap, whatever it may be, and show how they're taking life to another level. Just this right here, Brian's, what he's doing right here is important, and the fact that you're actually videoing it as well as audio, so they actually see. You know, like, wait a second, this could happen, because they think he's in a wheelchair. They don't think he has a voice.
Exactly.
Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, so it's a dude in a wheelchair. Okay, so what's up? So I think more of that, like, you know, what was it? The little train? Yeah, I think I can. I think I can. I know I can. I know I can. Right.
Yeah.
So more examples like that. And I just, once I heard his story, I'm going to hook him up with Get Up and Go Kayaking, which is a client of vYve. It has 31 different locations in the kayaking tourism business, and an owner who's got a big heart. So once I got that, now I know
That's
they're
awesome.
going to
Put 2 big hearts together, you make something happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
James, thank you. How can people reach out to you, find you? I mean, I know I tried to track you down because I know we were going to meet here, and I wanted to get you sitting in a chair next to me. And not everybody is willing to do
Pun
that.
intended.
8,800 followers on LinkedIn.
That's right.
Let's help James get to 10,000. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, so I'm James Orsini on LinkedIn and Instagram. I'm at Jimmy the Pencil on X.
Jimmy the Pencil?
Yeah, and
Okay, hold on.
And TikTok.
Hold on.
That's a
Where
story
did that
for another
come from?
day. That's a story for another day. You have to have me back.
Okay.
All right,
We'll talk
So
about
one
that.
last question before we get back to it. Obviously, the name of the podcast is Breaking Barriers. Give us your best story about how you had to break a barrier. You almost shocked yourself that you overcame. And when you look back on that, you say, you know what, that molded me.
I think it was that international role. I think it was the first time I was on that plane, and now I'm going to fly to Belgium. And for 15 years in 2 different companies, I traveled the globe as a kid that went to Florida once and went to Aruba on my honeymoon. I flew to Concord 8 times as a result of that.
Wow.
I mean, you know, big time story. And that was back in the day when it was limo to helicopter to first class to Concord. Not now.
That's something.
You know what I mean? That was back in the day when you went pre 9/11. So walking on planes 10 minutes before they take off.
Yeah.
It was a good life, and it's been a great career, and it's not over yet.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. That is James Orsini. That is Brian P. Swift. I am John Morris. This is the Breaking Barriers podcast powered by S.O.A.R. Thanks for tuning in. Come back next time. Cheers.